But what was less clear, and perhaps even offensive, was exactly who is Jesus calling a thief and a robber? He says that. He says, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. And when they didn't understand it, he says it to them again in verse 7. He doubles down on it. He says, I am the door of the sheep, and all who came before me were thieves and robbers. And if you're like me, you hear this and say, is Jesus throwing shade? I mean, because surely there were some faithful teachers of the law that came before him, right? I mean, why is he saying this harsh thing? Well, consider who's in his audience. Those following him around and opposing the truth of the gospel and suggesting that there's another way to the Father. He says, those who search for another way outside this gospel truth that I'm proclaiming, that man is a thief and a robber. So why is he making this distinction between thieves and robbers? Well, I want to tell you this. Thieves and robbers have the same end goal, to separate you from your stuff, right? The same end goal. They just go about it slightly differently. Thieves, the connotation of that, it tends to be thieves are a little bit more covert, a little bit more sly about it, a little bit more discreet. A robber is more blatant, more bold in his deeds. And it might even involve violent theft when we're talking about robbers. And so when Jesus enters the temple in Matthew 21 and he calls the money changers and the people selling animals a den of robbers, I find that interesting. He made a whip of cords, drove them out of the temple with their animals, poured out the money changers' money, turned over tables. Suffice it to say, he was furious. And why? He said to them, it is written, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. That's violent theft. I've looked at this passage many times and thought that Jesus' outrage was just about irreverence in his Father's house. And while it is about that, it's about so much more than that. It wasn't inherently wrong for a money changer to be a money changer or to sell animals. People would need animals if they were going into the temple to worship and to sacrifice the animals for worship. But what was wrong was their heart posture and their priorities. What Jesus was accusing them of stealing was far greater than money and far more precious than money. He was accusing them of stealing other people's access to the Father. You see, the outer courts was the only place in the temple that was open to all people, including non-Jewish persons, women, and foreigners. And so that's the significance of Jesus saying that his Father's house was to be a house of prayer for all nations, including non-Jewish people and immigrants. And so the money changers setting up shop in the outer courts was akin to them setting up a convenience store for those who were going further into the temple. And they were disrupting the worship, though, of those in the outer courts who already had very limited access. And so their worship space was being completely overrun and disrupted by animal purchases for the convenience of those with greater status going inside. The money changers sought their own gain to the disadvantage of those worshiping in the outer courts. And Jesus was livid. Yes, at the irreverence, but also at the bold injustice, the blatant robbery of those being denied access to worship and to pray to his Father in his Father's house. When he says his house is to be a house of prayer for all nations, it means not just for the people that we deserve need to be accommodated. Not just for the people that we prefer or who are like us or the ones who can increase us the most, but for all nations, all people groups. It means we don't get to exclude who he has included. We don't get to disinvite who he has invited. It means we don't get to put practices into place that deny any people group access from coming into the Lord's house. He says, my house is to be a house of prayer for all nations. Yet you have turned it into a den of robbers. And I want to suggest to us that the moment that we communicate to people that they need Jesus plus something else, it's the moment that we take on the role of the thief and the robber. The moment that we communicate that in order to get into the family of God, you need Jesus plus something else, that's the moment that we become the thieves and the robbers who put up barriers to the Father to protect our sameness. The money changers of that day didn't care about the sheep. Those worshipers in the outer courts, they didn't care about them. Their system boldly disadvantaged the most vulnerable for the benefit of the most influential. Jesus wasn't having it. He called them a den of robbers, bold in their theft of the worship space for those on the lower rungs of society who came to pray and worship their God. He says this, he says, all who came before me were thieves and robbers.